Hello, and God bless you. Here I am again. I seem like I never go away. I'm doing a 100-day of a thing with Jesus, a 100-day podcast with Jesus. It's from this book, and I mention it every time, Passion Code. Today, our code word is family. So, thank you for taking a minute with me. Today, it's Ellen Mongan from Wow Mom, and you have just a minute to learn about family and to learn about your faith and how you can put it into action this day. You know, life is short. One pastor one time said, he was preaching and teaching and doing his church. He said, you don't want to spend the whole time converting souls and lose your family. You don't want to have 1 second that you miss, like an important event. I have hair on my face today. Miss an important event with your family, like a baptism or confirmation or wedding, because you're serving Jesus. God is love, and even he had a family. Can you see Jesus and saying, Mom, I'm at school and I won an award, and Mary saying, I'd love to come, but I got to hang my wash today, or I've got a dinner date with a friend. I can't make it, Jesus. No, Mary was ever there with their son Jesus, and Jesus was ever there with him as well. Family counts. So this is Ellen Mongan for Take 5. What does family mean to you? You know, when I was a little girl, I moved all over the country. I went to and fro, this place and that place. I lived in a lot of states. I lived in, let's see, I was born in New York. I was only there 6 months and moved to Aiken, South Carolina, then Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, back to New York for a few years, Illinois, that was Arlington Heights, Illinois, and then I moved back south again in 1971. The day I graduated, my parents moved to Louisville, Georgia, and there I sat in the South. Well, I also lived in Florida as a kid. There I sat in the South a really long time. When I say I'm Southern, I don't say my y'alls right, but I say I've been in the South most of my life. And so there I am without an accent, but I just loved where God placed me. He placed me in a family. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, a mom and a pop. My dad's passed away, and he was my heart. They all know that. He was Daddy's girl. So family counts for me. And you know that feeling you have when you come back from college and you miss your mom's cooking and she makes your favorite meal? Do you know that feeling you have when you see your friends you grew up with in high school? Well, since I moved so much, I didn't really have that feeling of like, man, this is home. It wasn't until this year that we moved, Pat and I moved our second time to Florida to retire, and our kids started moving one by one into our neighborhood, Barton Trail, our old neighborhood, and everyone lived there, but we were the last almost to come. We have a baby in heaven, and we have a daughter and son-in-law and 3 granddaughters in Kentucky. But in the Georgia area, almost all of our kids lived not only the same place, but the same neighborhood, with a son in Georgia Tech for that time. So we never were so glad to sell our house in Florida in 1 week's time and move back home. And when we got to Augusta and chose our home, we feel like we're home. And for the first time, I tell my friends, the first time in my life, I know where home is, Augusta, Georgia. Well, it's really Evans. And I said, I feel like I'm at home. Then we had this church search, and we found a church that we feel at home in as well. I was a deacon, so it's a different kind of way is to find the church spiritually, and then like through the permission of the bishop. So we're waiting. But you know what? Home is where the heart is, but really home is where the people are that you loved. God loved his parents so much, Mary and Joseph. He was obedient. God suffered. He learned obedience for what he suffered. That's one of the scriptures. And he studied under Joseph. We see pictures of him learning the trade of a carpenter. Everyone has memories of home and the family and their mother. But this little thing, the code word family today, is what they talked about is the activity of him being born and then him being died. You know that we have between the dots, we're born, and then ... we die. And so what is between the dots? Jesus did a lot with his life between the dots. What are you doing? And what are you making a difference in this world with? That's what I got out of this week's session. Then I got this, and it's really deep in my soul. It's a word that really lives in my soul. When Jesus was dying, all of his friends gathered. Some weren't there. Some weren't anywhere to be found. But his faithful best friend John, there he was, and Mary was there. And a few other people were there. You know, very few people can stand the cross. If you haven't stood the cross by yourself, it's hard to stand the cross with someone else. And they all got scared and went away. But not John and not Mary. So when Jesus was getting ready to die, instead of thinking about himself, he thought, well, you know, John, my best possession is my mother. Would you take care of my mother? John, behold your mother. And Mary, will you take care of my best friend, John? Mary, behold your son. He didn't leave us orphans. He gave us Mary as well. And Mary was given to the whole world through that one sentence. The impressive part to me is that he's dying. He's suffering and he's leaving, but he's not going to leave his mother, who's at the foot of his cross, or his best friend, alone. He gives them each other. He knew he could trust John. John showed up. He knew he could trust Mary. She had raised him. She was always there. She was always there praying and standing with him. Well, when my mother-in-law was dying, Fran, I went to visit as much as I could. She had cancer. She lived way longer than they said. And I remember taking her hand. We had to go home for Christmas to our family, our children. And she was going to be left with her husband, and she was there in Florida. She didn't want to go with us, of course. She was dying. And she took my hands, and she said, "Oh, your hands are cold." I go, "That's okay. My hands are always cold. My daddy taught me cold hands, warm heart." And she was warming up my hands like my grandma would have done. And I was to tears because we were losing her. And someone that's dying that doesn't think about themselves, that's commendable. So I, to this day, mourn the loss of my mother-in-law, but that wasn't the point. The point was Jesus did the same thing. He looks out for his friends. Are you a friend to God? Is he looking out for you? Of course he is. We love him because he first loves us. So today, listen for his still small voice. In love of Christ, when you see someone suffering at the foot of the cross, as a way that you have suffered yourself, your job is to go there and be with them so you know what they need. When babies die, to a mother that loses a baby, even if it's a miscarriage or a full term, Pat and I go, we know how it feels. We know what to say, and we know what not to say as well. When someone has a trial in their life that we've walked through, Corinthians states really clearly, the trials of life are there to help you to help others. He allows the trial, and then we are able to know what to do for the next guy. I paraphrased today, but what I did paraphrase is this book. This book, you want to get a copy of The Passion Code, and it's 100 Days with Jesus. It's my take every day. Today, the word family. Treasure your family. We never know when they're going to take their last breath. And we never know we are either. But that's the good news. Christ has died, Christ has risen, Christ will come again. But for us, we're born, and then one day we die. What are you doing between the dots? Dot, 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 dot. Today, if you hear his voice, harden not your heart. So this was take 5, and I thank you for taking 5 with me today. Thank you for sharing a minute. I hope you learned something. I sure did. What am I going to do between the dots? And who can I be there for in a trial? Have a great day. Family, family first.